This was an incredibly strange disappearance, and to this day, it has never been fully explained. In April 2014, two young Dutch women, Kris Kremers and Lisanne Froon, suddenly vanished during a hiking trip in Panama. For 2 long months, they seemed to have evaporated from the face of the earth, until their belongings and fragments of their bones were discovered. But this discovery only opened the door to even stranger theories surrounding their deaths. Although the case was ultimately ruled as an accident, the evidence made many believe that something far more terrifying had happened to them. Kris and Lisanne both grew up in the Netherlands, where they first met while working at a restaurant in Amsterdam. With similar personalities and shared interests, they quickly became close friends. Both shared a passion for travel and a desire to learn Spanish. So in 2014, Kris, 21, and Lisanne, 22, decided to embark on a trip to South America. Driven by their adventurous spirit and the idea of creating a meaningful life experience, the girls planned the trip 6 months in advance. To make the journey more fulfilling, they signed up to volunteer as teachers at a local school for about 4 weeks. On March 15, 2014, the two departed Amsterdam and landed in Costa Rica. From there, they made their way to the city of Boquete del Toro in Panama. During their first 2 weeks in Boquete del Toro, they sunbathed on the beaches, enjoyed nature, and studied Spanish at a school called Spanish by the Sea. On March 29th, Kris and Lisanne continued their journey to the mountain town of Boquete, Panama. Their plan was to begin volunteering at a local school in Boquete. But when they arrived, the school informed them they wouldn't be able to start teaching until the following week. The sudden change frustrated both of them, especially Lisanne, who didn't want to waste time waiting. So instead, the two decided to explore Panama's natural wonders. And it was this decision that would ultimately lead to tragedy. Kris and Lisanne chose to hike Volcan Baru near the Costa Rican border. The area was famous for its stunning beauty and winding trails. Both women had experience. Just 2 weeks prior, they had completed a jungle expedition. They were excited for this new adventure. They rented a room in Boquete to stay for the remainder of their trip. According to their host, a woman named Miriam, Lisanne's asthma had begun to worsen. She coughed heavily and complained of sore throat. On the morning of April 1st, 2014, Kris and Lisanne set out to hike a trail called El Pianista. This trail cut through Panama's famed cloud forest, a dense jungle shrouded in mist, creating a surreal, almost magical atmosphere. But that evening, they never returned. Their families noticed that WhatsApp messages had stopped, and their usual Facebook updates came to a sudden halt. The next day, April 2nd, they missed an appointment with a local guide named Feliciano. Locals began to suspect the women were lost, but waited to see if they would return. By 5 p.m. that day, police were called. 12 hours later, on April 3rd, the official search began. There was confusion about when authorities truly started. While Panama's government claimed searches began on April 3rd, locals insisted it didn't actually start until April 6th, when the families of Kris and Lisanne arrived in Panama. The Dutch government soon dispatched a team of 18 soldiers and 12 rescue dogs to assist. The families even offered a $30,000 reward for critical information. But despite all efforts, there was no sign of Kris or Lisanne. Then, over 2 months later, a breakthrough appeared. On June 14th, a local woman handed over a blue backpack she had found near a riverbank by her village, Alto Romero, a remote community about 6 miles from where the women were last seen. Inside the backpack were Lisanne's passport, some clothes, sunglasses, $83 in cash, a water bottle, and, most crucially, their phones and camera, all in working condition. These devices would become the key evidence in unraveling the mystery, or so investigators hoped. The calls and the photos. When investigators examined the phones, they discovered that emergency calls had been attempted just hours after the women began their hike. On April 1st, 2014, the first distress calls were placed, both to international and local emergency numbers. But none of the calls went through because the area had no cell service. Lisanne's phone battery died on April 3rd, and after that, only Kris's phone was sporadically turned on, likely in an attempt to conserve power while searching for signal. Between April 7th and April 11th, a total of 77 emergency calls were placed from Kris's phone. Only one of those connected, but the signal dropped after just 2 seconds. This was during the height of the search effort, meaning the women were likely still alive during that time. Kris's phone finally went dead on April 11th. More chilling than the failed calls were the photos recovered from Lisanne's Canon SX-270 camera. At first, the pictures were normal, shots of the girls smiling near the Continental Divide, posing with good spirits on April 1st. But then, things turned dark. Investigators found photos of a waterfall taken just an hour before the first emergency calls. After that, the camera wasn't used again until April 8th, when nearly 90 pictures were suddenly taken during the night between 1 o'clock and 4 a.m. Most of these shots were pure black. Others showed eerie, fragmented images of the jungle at night. Some believe the photos weren't meant to capture memories, but instead were attempts to use the camera's flash as a makeshift flashlight to navigate in the dark. A few of the photos stood out. One showed a branch with red plastic tied around it, possibly as a marker. Another displayed toilet paper and a mirror placed on a rock for reasons unknown. The most disturbing was a close-up of Kris's bloodied hair. The remaining photos continued to depict the dark, misty jungle with no clear answers. With the backpack and photos in hand, search teams combed the surrounding area. Soon, more discoveries were made. First came a pair of tattered denim shorts believed to belong to Kris. Then, scattered human remains began to surface along the riverbanks. The most complete find was a foot still inside its shoe. Nearby, investigators found a large pelvic bone. In total, 33 bone fragments were recovered, all confirmed to belong to Kris and Lisanne. But the condition of the remains only deepened the mystery. Some bones still had tissue attached, while others appeared completely bleached, possibly from prolonged sun exposure. The contrast made it impossible to determine an exact cause of death. The strange state of the bones, paired with the bizarre photos, led to countless theories. The most accepted theory was that the women simply became lost. Instead of heading back south toward Boquete, they had unknowingly walked north, deeper into the uninhabited jungle. When they realized they were lost, they tried calling for help, but with no reception, they pushed deeper into the wilderness in hopes of finding aid. Unfortunately, what awaited them was miles of unforgiving rainforest. Many believe that on April 8th, the night the strange photos were taken, Kris suffered a deadly accident. She may have slipped from a ledge or fallen near the river. Lisanne, desperate to help, used the flash of the camera to light her way. Remember, on that Canon SX-270, the flash only activates when taking a photo. The timing of the images suggests Lisanne was slowly climbing, marking locations, and possibly checking Kris's injuries in the dark. But this accident theory leaves questions. Why didn't they try retracing their steps? Were they so disoriented that they lost all sense of direction? Or was something or someone driving them deeper into danger? Another theory pointed to a man named Feliciano, the local guide who reported the women missing. According to reports, Feliciano had met the girls just a day earlier. He offered to guide them to the Continental Divide and invited them to stay overnight at his ranch on the far side of the mountain. For reasons unknown, Kris and Lisanne declined and chose to hike El Pianista on their own. Locals claimed Feliciano had a reputation for inappropriate behavior toward female tourists. After the tragedy, several travelers even posted on Reddit describing harassment from him. Many suspected he was somehow involved in the deaths. But if foul play was the cause, why were the women able to use their phones and camera so freely? Would an attacker really allow them to make dozens of emergency calls? Some suggest a combination of both theories, that Feliciano, angry after being rejected, may have followed the women. Terrified, they fled deeper into the jungle. only to become fatally lost. There were other oddities too. Starting April 5th, Kris's phone was turned on, but investigators noted that the correct PIN was no longer entered. From that day on, the phone was never unlocked again. Some believe this means the phone had fallen into the wrong hands, that someone tried and failed to unlock it. Dutch investigators, however, later stated there was no conclusive evidence of incorrect PIN entries. It was also possible that the women deliberately avoided unlocking the phone to conserve battery, using it only to check for reception. Then there was the missing photo. On Lisanne's camera, every photo was sequentially numbered, but photo number 509 was missing. Images 508 and 510 were there, but 509 had vanished completely. Had someone deliberately deleted it? If so, it wasn't easy to do. Experts explained that deleting a photo entirely from the memory card, without leaving a trace, would require connecting the camera to a computer and using special software. Why would a killer go through such trouble to erase just one photo, yet leave the backpack intact with all the other evidence inside? Could it have been a simple technical error, or a deliberate attempt to confuse investigators? Either way, the missing image only added to the mystery. After the discovery, many amateur sleuths returned to the jungle to try and pinpoint the locations from the photos. Some believe they found the waterfall and a makeshift cable bridge that may have caused Kris to fall. But this remains speculation. The blurry, nighttime photos are far from conclusive. So, were Kris Kremers and Lisanne Froon victims of a tragic accident in Panama's treacherous wilderness? Or were they driven into the jungle by someone with dark intentions? The truth is still hidden, buried deep beneath the misty canopy of Panama's cloud forest.